If you are a computer power user, a server administrator, or you work in tech, then you probably use the command line. So if you are especially a Linux user, using the terminal can help you to accomplish tasks quicker. Not to mention there are things that can only feasibly be done with a command line. Now, this is true for Linux, and it's also true for macOS, since macOS has Unix roots and most of the commands that would work on Linux also work on macOS. But what about Windows? Traditionally, Windows users have been lumped with the command prompt, a very basic DOS-style command environment that pales in comparison to the power of the Linux terminal. In fact, Microsoft itself has kind of admitted this by including the Windows subsystem for Linux, which confusingly lets you run Linux on Windows and not the other way around, to allow you to use Linux terminal commands and software within a Windows environment. However, Windows is not a one-trick pony, and besides the Windows subsystem for Linux, there is also the Windows PowerShell. The Windows PowerShell is a, well, powerful shell that you can use on Windows to accomplish pretty much every task you would normally do on a Windows machine, but using a command line. Now, the Windows PowerShell is used by Windows Server administrators, but it can actually be used by anyone, and anything you could normally do on a Linux terminal, you can actually do in PowerShell. In this mini-series, I'm going to be covering what the Windows PowerShell is, the basic commands for using it, why you would want to use it, and I'll show you some cool demos of stuff you can do with the PowerShell. So, let's get started. According to Microsoft's own documentation, PowerShell is a cross-platform task automation solution consisting of three parts: a command line shell, a scripting language, and a configuration management framework. The command line shell, in Microsoft's own words, includes the best features of other popular shells, such as a robust command line history, tab completion and command prediction, aliases, a pipeline, and an in-console help system similar to Unix man pages. Sounds familiar? Yeah. PowerShell is also a scripting language based on the .NET Common Language Runtime. It supports functions, classes, scripts, and modules, type formatting, a type management system, and common data formats like CSV, JSON, and XML. Finally, PowerShell is also a configuration management system. This lets you create configurations for enterprise deployments and then force these deployments. In essence, PowerShell is to Windows what the Linux terminal is to Linux. However, the interesting part here is that PowerShell is cross-platform. You can run PowerShell on Windows, macOS, and Linux too. In this mini-series, we'll be using the latest version of PowerShell, which, depending on your platform, is either PowerShell 7.2 or PowerShell 7.1, the stable release of PowerShell as of August 2021. Microsoft supports this version of PowerShell on Windows 8.1 and later, Windows Server 2012 R2 and later, macOS 10.13, that's High Sierra, or later, as well as several flavors of Linux, including long-term support versions of Ubuntu from 16.04 and later, Ubuntu 21.04, Debian 9 and 10, as well as CentOS and Red Hat Enterprise Linux 7 and 8. However, other distributions of Linux are also supported by the community. If you're interested in PowerShell, then you're probably most interested in using it on Windows, which is what I'll be installing it on here. However, installing it on other platforms is just as easy. If you're using Windows, you probably already have PowerShell installed. Simply go to the search bar and type PowerShell, and as you can see here, the Windows PowerShell app is displayed. Once you've opened PowerShell, we can use a command to figure out what version we have. I can type $PS version table. And as you can see here, I'm told that I'm using PowerShell version 5.1 point something. I'm also told about the edition of PowerShell I have here. Now, if you want to stick with the default version of PowerShell that ships with Windows, that's absolutely fine. But if you want to install the latest version, keep following. And you'll also need this if you're installing PowerShell on macOS or Linux. From Microsoft's documentation, we can go here to install, and as you can see, there are instructions for several platforms. In our case, we'll go to Windows, but obviously if you're using Linux or macOS, use the appropriate page here. From the Windows page, we'll have this section here, download the installer package, which is exactly what I'm going to do. This takes us to the GitHub page, and as you can see, the latest version available for my system is version 7.1.4, which was released 12th August 2021. Of course, your version will be more recent depending on when you're viewing this video. So I'm going to go ahead and scroll down, and as you can see, it's available for many platforms. So the one I want here is PowerShell 7.1.4 Windows x64.msi. So if you're using Windows, that's probably what you want as well. Okay, so PowerShell has downloaded. I'm going to go ahead and close this PowerShell for now and click Open File. And we'll go through the setup process. So from here, we can say add PowerShell to path environment variable, register Windows event logging, enable PowerShell. Okay, I'm actually going to click this as well. So this allows me to open a folder that I'm browsing in Windows directly in PowerShell. And I'm probably going to add this as well. Add run with PowerShell 7 context menu for PowerShell files. And what the heck, since I've enabled almost everything else, I'm going to go ahead and enable this too. And I'll click install. And I'll approve. Okay, so PowerShell has now been installed. So now I should be able to go to my search bar and search for PowerShell. And as you can see, now I have Windows PowerShell and I have PowerShell 7. Okay, so you'll notice that the older version, version 5.1, says Windows PowerShell. And that's because as of version 5, PowerShell was only available for Windows. But from PowerShell 6 onwards, it's now cross-platform. So be careful. If I still click on Windows PowerShell and I type PS version table, you'll notice that this still says 5.1. So the version of PowerShell that was installed with Windows is still here. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to run PowerShell 7, which you can see here. And as you can see, I get PowerShell 7.1.4. Let me just adjust the font size here. Now, typing in the same command shows that I'm using PowerShell 7.1.4. Most commands in PowerShell are known as commandlets, which is actually written CMDLET. So a commandlet is a built-in PowerShell command that you can only use from within PowerShell itself. The commandlet consists of a verb and a noun. So for example, the command get-command consists of the verb get, which is basically telling us what we want to do, get something, and then command identifies the resource. So what do we want to get? So you can think of the command as an action and a resource. Going to PowerShell and typing get-command will show us a list of all available PowerShell commands. And as you can see, there are quite a lot of them. And PowerShell even tells us what kind of service this is and what version of PowerShell this particular command was added in. Now, besides commandlets, you can also use the Windows PowerShell to run any program or command available on the system. For example, if I type Notepad, the Windows Notepad will pop up, much like a normal shell or command prompt. Whilst working in PowerShell, you can use the CLS command to clear the screen, or you can also type clear, which does the same thing. As you can see here, there are commands from both the traditional Windows command prompt, which emulates DOS, as well as some modern Linux terminals. Now, one thing you should note is that in most cases, PowerShell does not allow you to run commands which require user access control. So for example, if I type get-service, again, notice the structure of the commandlet, verb and resource. And then we have an option, -name, and we'll say W32 time. So this is the Windows time service. And I'm going to pipe that into the stop service commandlet. So I'm trying to stop the Windows time service. Now, when I press enter, you'll see that it gives me an error. It says service Windows time cannot be stopped due to the following error. Cannot open the Windows 32 time service on computer, the current computer. Now, the reason that this doesn't work is because I am not running Windows PowerShell, or rather PowerShell, as administrator. And it doesn't ask me to elevate my privileges. So what you need to do is close PowerShell, look for it again in the Start menu, and then right-click on PowerShell and click Run as Administrator. So now running this command should work. And as you can see, this time I don't get an error message and the Windows time service is stopped. Now, of course, stopping the Windows time service is not the best idea. So let's start it again with Start Service Win32 time. And that service has been started again. Now, if you want to make sure that you always run Windows PowerShell as administrator, one thing you can do is just add that to your taskbar. So I can go to PowerShell 7 here and right-click and say Pin to Taskbar. And as you can see, that creates an icon here. Now, whilst holding down Shift, I'll right-click on the icon and choose Properties. Then, from the Compatibility tab, I'll choose Run this program as administrator and hit Apply. So now when I open PowerShell, you'll see that it asks me for permission. And as you can see, I'm now running Windows PowerShell as administrator. Now that we're inside PowerShell, we can use some basic commands you'll find on pretty much any shell to get stuff done. For example, you'll notice I am in the c:/users/keat folder. If I type ls, this will show me the contents of the current folder, as well as some permission modes and last write time. I can use mkdir to create a new folder, for example, stuff. And as you can see now, that folder stuff has been created. To go to that folder, I can type cd stuff, and I am now inside the stuff folder. Now that I'm here, I can create an empty file by typing $null, double redirect into myfile.txt, or whatever you want to call your file. So now if I look at the folder, you'll see that there is a new empty file called myfile.txt. If I want to edit this file, I can easily do so with Notepad. Notepad, myfile.txt. And I can type some text in here, save it, and quit Notepad. I can now look at the contents of this file by typing type and then myfile.txt. Now, this is a good place to point out that, like many other terminals, PowerShell has tab completion. So if I start by typing my, for example, and then press tab, you'll notice that the PowerShell auto-completes the file name. And when I press enter, you can see that the contents of the file are displayed in the terminal. You can also press the up arrow key to go through previously executed commands, as you can see here, just like you would in a Linux terminal. The copy, move, and rename commands are the same as on Linux. For example, I can say cp for copy, the name of the file I want to copy, and the new name I want to give it, such as myfile2.txt. So now, as you can see, a copy of the file is created containing the same contents as the original one. If I want to rename that file, I can use mv. For example, I want to rename my file 2.txt to new file.txt. And as you can see, the file is now renamed. If I want to remove that file, I can use rm, give it the file name, and that file is now removed. This can also be used to move stuff to other folders. For example, I'm going to create a folder called subfolder, which, as you can see, is now in here. And then I'm going to move my file.txt to the subfolder. So now, as you can see, there's only the subfolder. And if I look at the contents of the subfolder, you'll see that my file is in there. Now, if I want to remove that folder, I can do rm subfolder. Now, this will bring up a confirmation dialog, okay? So this is a bit different to what your default Linux terminal will do. So it will say the item at c:" blah 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 subfolder has children, and the recurse parameter was not specified. If you continue, all children will be removed with the item. Are you sure you want to continue? So we didn't specifically tell PowerShell that we want to remove the children of the folder. So in this case, it's asking us whether we want to remove them. And so I'm going to say, yes, I want to continue. And now if I look at my folder, it is entirely empty. You can create files by adding items to the file. For example, I can say echo hello. And as you can see, that will display hello on screen. If I type the previous command, I can then redirect using the greater than symbol to a name of a file. For example, story.txt. And now if I look at my folder, there is a file in there. And if I look at the contents of that file, I get hello. Now I can also type something like goodbye and redirect to story.txt. Now, if I look at the contents of story.txt, you'll notice it only says goodbye. So just like on Linux, the redirection operator overwrites the file by default. So what I can do is I can use a double redirect operator. For example, here I'm going to say this is another line of text. I'll put two greater than symbols and then the name of the file. And now if I look at the contents of the file, you'll see that the other line of text was appended to the existing file. Now let's take a look at PowerShell scripting. So if I want to create a script, I can, if I really want to, use Notepad. So for example, I'm going to say notepad myscript.ps1. Typically, PowerShell scripts have the ps1 extension. Now, as you can see, when I open Notepad here, it says cannot find the file. Do you want to create a new file? So I'll say yes. And I can now type my script here. For now, I'm just going to use get service. The service name is win32time, which is the same thing we used before. And I'm going to add it to stop service dash pass through. Okay, that's my script here, which I'm now going to save. So if I now look in the stuff folder, you'll see that there is the script here, my script.ps1. Now, in order to run that script, I can type /myscript.ps1. When I press enter, you'll notice that in my case, it worked. However, this might not be the case for you. You may get an error. So let's look at this command here, get dash, and if you type ex and press tab, you'll notice it auto-completes to get execution policy. Now, when I press enter, you'll see that mine says remote signed. However, yours might say restricted. Let's change our execution policy. So I'm going to say set execution policy dash execution policy, you'll notice that option names can be auto-completed as well. And I'm going to change it to restricted. So now if I run get execution policy, it says restricted. If I now try to run my script again, you'll see that I get a warning. It says the script cannot be loaded because running scripts is disabled on the system. If this is the first time you're using PowerShell, this is probably what error you got when you tried to run the myscript.ps1 script. Luckily, changing this is easy. So we can go back to set execution policy remote signed. And now this has changed it, and I can now successfully execute my script. Now that I've stopped the Windows time service, I'm going to start it again. Start service name Win32 time. So that's what you'll need to do to run a script. Now, there are many things you might want to do with PowerShell scripting, and if you find this series useful, I might make a few episodes about scripting on PowerShell. But I want to conclude today with how you can get help on PowerShell itself. So the primary command that you can use is rather aptly called get help. Okay, and from here I can type the name of the command that I want to get help on. So let me actually get help on the get help command itself. Now, as you can see here, it gives me some basic information. Okay, so the name, which is get help, and then the syntax that I can use in order to get help about the help command. These are structured similar to Unix and Linux man pages containing the name of the command, the syntax you use, aliases, and other remarks. Now you'll note here that it says get help cannot find the help files for this commandlet. It is displaying only partial help. To download and install help files for this module, use update help. Okay, so update help. And this will download the latest help files to your computer. Now that the help files have downloaded, let's try our help command again. As you can see, this time I get much more output. Okay. Now the get help command simply spits out the entire help file to the console. Rather than using get help, I can just say help, and then I can specify what I want help on. And what happens is that this displays the help file one page at a time. And if I press space, it takes me to the next page, and so on. I can type Q to get back to my console. Now, for many commands, displaying the help only displays part of the help file. If you want to display the full help file, you can say help-name, get help as before, but then specify the option full. And this will display the full help file for the commandlet that you're looking at. And as you can see, this gives you much more information, as you can see here. Now again, many times when you're looking for help on something, you'll typically just Google it, but it's good to have some help built into the console as well. And this is actually pretty good because it actually gives you examples and related links where you can get more help. Now, besides getting the full help file, you can also get help on a specific parameter. For example, help, again, get help. And this time I'm going to specify parameter name. And as you can see, this goes directly to the part of the help file that has information about the name parameter. And you can see here that you get the entire help file. You can also directly switch to a section of a help file. For example, get help name Let's use another command. Let's here get command, and I'll say show me only the examples, which is typically what I do. And as you can see, it scrolls directly to the examples part. Or I can say the show window. And as you can see, this will actually bring up a window containing the help file, which you can obviously then keep separate here, and use the command whilst being able to read the help file in here. So this can be pretty useful as well. You can also view the help online by specifying the online parameter. And this will actually open your web browser and take you directly to the page from Microsoft website containing the help about the command you're looking for. So as you can see, even if you want to get help online, you can start that help session from within PowerShell itself. Besides getting help, you might also want to find commands. And this is where you can use the noun option. So for example, as shown before, if I type get command, you'll see here that a huge list of commands is displayed. So what I can do instead is I can say get command dash noun, and then give it something such as process. And this will only show commands that have the word process somewhere in their name. This also supports wildcards. For example, I can say dash name asterisk service asterisk. And this will show any command containing service either as an individual word or as part of a word. So if you don't know exactly what command you're looking for, this can be very useful as well. So I think we've done enough for today, so let's call it a day. I hope you've enjoyed this first video on the Windows PowerShell. Based on your feedback, I might make a few more. And if there's particular things you'd like to do with the PowerShell, why not leave me a comment down below and I'll make sure to cover it in an upcoming video. In the meantime, I would really appreciate if you would like and subscribe to this channel. It really helps to keep me motivated and it helps this channel a lot. I'll catch you in the next video, and until then, thanks for watching.